Welcome back, everybody. This is our second live setting here in the Glowing Up Black podcast family.
I'm Danny.
And this is Eric.
Listen, we had to come on here because the tea
Has been spilt all over the place.
Tonight, we had to go live talking about the Harry and Meghan Oprah interview.
Oh, it was juicy.
It was juicy. It was
It hit
2
home.
hours.
It was a lot.
And I feel like it wasn't enough at the same time.
It wasn't.
Honestly, they could have their own show on their own on this experience.
I think their podcast will really pick up steam now that they're like all.
I just don't think they're going to talk about it anymore. I think they're like, that's my only thing. Is that
might be
like,
true.
I think they're going to use the podcast to open other people's
promote other things
stories,
and other people's stories. That's true.
Not necessarily their own, because then they'll be accused of like using their
story.
So, to monetize themselves.
Well,
what did y'all think? We're going to wait for people to come
drop into the comments. Let us know what you're thinking about the interview.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll get trolls on this
What
video.
were the most momentous things? We don't worry about them. We don't worry about them. We glowing up black out here, y'all. Anyways, what did you think? What was the biggest bombshell that you thought were out there? We have a couple of our own. I feel like there's some new information that came out.
Yeah.
Do you want to kind of talk about that, or what do you think?
I think we can start with the fact that this is kind of a universal story, right? In that at the heart of it,
right,
there are two people who came together to form a family. And
their families had to come together, and they had separate cultures, and they had separate expectations and separate understanding. Because we've been through this. We've been through it where we've had...
And there's like a ripple effect.
Exactly. Your friends and your family. I think I said to you, just like the idea of a married couple, it actually creates a new identity for both people. And everybody around that couple now has to figure out how to develop new relationships with that new identity. And it's hard for people. It's really hard for people to really deal with that.
Period. For all the people who surround the couple from their family. I think a lot of times when you have two people coming together to form a new family in marriage, there is, like one side of the family comes
and there's
with,
ideas.
This is who we are. This is who we are. And, no family wants one person to kind of have more of a say over the other, and it becomes this thing of like expectations, some of which the couple themselves don't even know exist until
you're in the situation.
There's like a union. And then all of a sudden, all these family members have different rules that you may be like, where did that come from? I didn't know it was like a family rule.
And for Meghan specifically, because I think that ultimately she became more estranged from specific people on her side.
Yeah, she absolutely
during
lost
the process,
her father, which is crazy.
But when she entered into, she said something very interesting while she was talking to Oprah during her like personal section, like the first hour when it was just her and Oprah. And she said that she really thought that the institution, the firm, the family would protect her. And so she let them handle it. And you could see throughout the interview that she would mention
over her power.
That's exactly what I was going to say, is that she gave up agency over herself.
I love that.
Right. She said that they took her passport. They took her driver's license. Like literally she could not leave the grounds of wherever she was. Not even
just the grounds. She couldn't leave the country. Imagine being from another country.
And you can't go home to visit your family when you want to.
I can't go home when things are hard. When I need a hug.
Right.
That I literally cannot leave. That is crazy. And the thing about it is, like, people like to paint Harry and Meghan as this young couple. They are young in terms of their years together, that they're a new family.
Right.
But she is like a 38-year-old woman and he's like 35 or 36.
They're not
and
that
it's
young.
Like they're not that young. She's a woman who has
They've been through stuff. He's been to
who's
in
had
war
a free
zones,
life.
They've traveled the country,
he's a former
the world
soldier.
rather.
Exactly. And the fact that all of a sudden she comes into this family
and she basically becomes a tool, not a tool necessarily, an object, a symbol, an icon that befits and uplifts the crown, but you're no longer a person. Your personhood has been taken. You're simply just someone that's slotted into this arrangement that everybody upholds.
But so the family thought that they could control the arrangement, right? That you're here now, we take away your power, or nicely though, give us your power, we'll protect you, we've got it. And then they tried to put her into the role that they had designed,
right?
Which was down here. Don't get too big for your britches. And what they couldn't control was the global interest in her.
Same thing that happened to Harry's mom.
Could not control that.
That's the exact same thing that happens with Harry's mom. We'll touch on like the parallels and the generational patterns that have occurred in Harry's life.
Yes, because we do think that the reason why we're talking about this on our podcast is because, there are basic things that happen. Like we said, when you come together, when new people come together,
in a marriage,
you form yourself as a family, you also as the couple have to figure out, who are we now? I'm no longer attached to my former family. He's no longer attached. Like we're attached like familially, but our main, this is
obligation,
our main family
your main priority.
Yes. Priority is this family and how we are going to do things.
And there's lots of choices that they made along the way to
new choices, new boundaries, new standards.
Right. They made choices to fight for each other. And we'll talk about all that. So, we talked about marrying into a new family. We talked about, but again, I think we wanted to talk about some of the things that we learned about that were new
Well,
in this interview. So
the most exciting.
So the very first thing is we have a new
little niece in the
niece,
oven,
right,
who's baking. So they dropped the
Meghan and Danielle are cousins, in case you guys didn't know.
Yes, she is my cousin Meg. I am Team Meghan, Team Harry. #, Sussex Squad. Come fight me.
No, don't do any of that. Just say hi or bye.
I don't want all the smoke. I really don't. I don't want it. Actually.
Well, we're just dabbling a toe in the Sussex pond. But yeah, so we have a new girl in the family. Yeah. And outside of that, there was a interesting tidbit of information about this, a scandal that happened.
Oh.
Do you want to talk about the chickens? Shoot. The chickens are important to her. I'm gonna give you 5 minutes.
Okay.
Go off on the chickens.
So if you guys many of you don't know us yet, but we talked about this on our regular podcast, that I have this dream of when we become home owners, that
owning a homestead.
Yeah.
With the greenhouse.
So maybe
and
that's
chicken
our
coop.
second. That's it's a little bit far off, but yes, I really have this plan to kind of have a life for us that we're self-sustainable and self-sustaining, and that, the gardening I want to do. Yes, I want pretty flowers and all that. I also want food, for us, and I want chickens, and it was so nice to see that, Meghan had her little chickens, and they had their, their little chicken coop.
It was a little aspirational to see all of that, I think.
For somebody who's a
city girl, she don't know nothing about chickens.
I'm a total city girl, but I have this idea to be not a country girl, but almost. I'm not a doomsdayer, okay? I'm not. But I do believe that in the event that things go wrong in this
depending on where you
world,
live in the country, things going wrong means a lot, but it always results in the same things.
We've all been
you can't get food, your power's out, your water supply dries up. So how do we make sure we can prepare for those things?
How do you make sure that your family is good when everything else goes wrong? And I think we all kind of got to that point earlier on in this panorama that's still going on. And so that's why I was attached to the chickens. But so there was other tea that was dropped that was piping hot, sizzle, whoa. And
so
that was
the Kate spat.
So
it's been a whole story about Kate supposedly. Now, mind you, I'm gonna take a deep breath, because as soon as I heard about it, I was like, this is angry black woman versus sweet white woman, victim white woman, immediately. Basically, there was a story way back in the day where supposedly Meghan made Kate cry. Come on, they're two adults. She dropped a tear. Why are we talking about this?
In the lead up to the wedding.
To her wedding.
Apparently, it was about bridesmaids' dresses.
And the truth was the conflict was about the flower maids' dresses or something like that. But it was a reverse scenario where Kate said something mean and made Meghan cry. But Meghan wasn't going to drop that. She wasn't going to talk about that. She wasn't going to bring it a big deal because Kate had apologized and they'd reconciled. So let's move on. But the way the tabloids work it, they spun it,
so
turned it
basically
around.
this was months later after the wedding, and all of a sudden the tabloids have this nugget of, a story that in the lead up to the wedding that Meghan made Kate cry. And it became this thing. So originally there was a lot of positive support for Meghan.
Right.
I mean, there was also negatives, racial stuff that came out from the get-go. That was out of the gate. Then it seemed to kind of calm down once people realized, like, okay, he's really going to marry her. They're really, like, all right, let's be supportive. To an extent. And so then they went on this tour that was like super successsul, and all of a sudden things started
Harry
changing.
mentions this later on in the interview. He was like, there was a certain turning point, and that was it. Again, it parallels the Diana turning point. He was like, this trip to Australia was literally, I think I wrote it down. He said it brought back memories. And I think he was mentioning how because Diana got so much positive press and she outshone basically
his father, Charles.
Prince Charles, that the same thing was happening, is that Meghan was now upstaging everybody in the royal family, basically.
Which, like, you could say, okay, maybe that's true. Or if someone's telling that, you could just, as an adult, say, like, I'm not worried about it. She just got married. Give them a year for people to lose their minds. Yeah. And then it'll be fine.
But it goes back to the object scenario.
Deal with it.
It goes back to if I cannot control how you're used and how I benefit from you.
How you're received.
Exactly. Then I don't want it. Thanks for commenting and joining us. One Hanami. I think that's how you say it. Hanamai, maybe. Please let us know if we get it right or wrong. But basically, they say Kate seems so miserable. Kate is jealous of Meghan. I don't know how miserable Kate is. I think she's much more comfortable sitting in the idea of what a royal woman looks like. I'm not invested enough to know whether or not she's miserable. But I do think that there's definitely a level of like, I'm supposed to be the next queen, like, and not queen really, or what is it called when you're the wife of the king?
Consort, but I think they're going to refer to her as Queen Kate when the time comes.
So I do think it's like, I
think she is miserable. I think at the end of the day, she doesn't have a voice either. I think that it's been her and her husband and everyone has lauded them as like this perfect whatever for like 10 years, maybe a little bit more, since she was initially William's girlfriend.
Right.
And she is not used to competition. Right. Like she's never had to share the spotlight. Everyone else that she's shared the spotlight with, she's been technically higher up than them on the hierarchy. So even if they come at her, at the end of the day, when the time is right, they have to curtsy to her. And when you have that power, you can kind of rest on that. And when I don't think she or her team were ready for
nobody in the institution was ready for it.
Interest in Meghan, and not just interest, at the time, positive.
Diana was the most talked about, most written about woman on the planet.
Right.
And now it's Meghan. And that level of pressure, both from if you're under it or if you're around it, you're going to be affected by it.
And I'm sure people told her, you better watch out.
Yeah, people are in her ear.
You're gonna want some of that Meghan spotlight. So make sure you guys go to Wimbledon together and smile, and people will show. And we'll make sure to prop you up and say that you're helping her, that you're guiding her, right? And so it's very clear how insecure the monarchy is.
Harry actually says it a lot. You had mentioned that she's kind of stuck. Harry mentions that not only was he trapped in the bubble, the royal bubble, but he says my family is trapped in the royal bubble, and that includes Kate and his father and his brother and his grandmother. So he really believes that when you're in it, it's very difficult to see. I think he mentioned this as well. He said that I've tried to teach them as well, because I had to learn by walking in Meghan's shoes about what she's going through, both as a woman, as a Black woman, as an American woman, you know, as an outsider to all of this. I had to learn by walking in her shoes. I just didn't know how privileged I was, all of that. And so he mentions it about them as well. But, you know, you take all that and then you tie it into one of the biggest scandals that have come out of today's.
I just noticed 16 people are watching. Hey guys, welcome.
One of the biggest scandals that came out of today's interview, the one drop scandal.
Oh my gosh, the fact that
what is Archie going to look like when he's born?
I think that's such, I mean, I think people of color probably expected it because people in the media did talk about it, right?
Right.
But you just wouldn't have thought that those conversations would happen from his family, especially maybe like behind closed doors, but not directly to Harry. So Meghan alludes to the fact that his family had these conversations,
right? You
know, wondering about Archie's skin color, which is kind of just absurd, right? Because at the end of the day, like, this is a woman who is biracial, and then she marries a man who is English, and like, what is this one drop rule? Like like no one skin color or culture or whatever, like, is like so strong that it's going to completely like outrun the 75% DNA of whiteness that the child has in him, which is probably more, right? Like, because Black Americans
I think
are not 100%.
It's less
Black,
about the absolutism of it and about the illusion or perception that he will... about what he would represent as an image. I think that's why they're so upset about her.
That's the problem.
Because you've talked about, you know, people mentioning, oh, you know, Meghan doesn't look like the type of Black woman that I would expect. It's the same thing with Archie.
Yeah, so I've seen there have been interviews, you know, in the lead up to this, where certain press people have compared, like literally put Meghan and Kate together in a side by side, and like, well, I don't really see, you know,
a black
woman when I look at Meghan, and it's like, it's not about what you see, right? It's about the fact that you know her heritage and that you then project your feelings and concerns onto her because you know her heritage. It doesn't matter what she actually looks like on the outside.
And the same thing will happen with your son.
Because your knowledge of her heritage allows you, or you think you're allowed, to treat her any kind of way or in a specific way because of her known heritage. It's not about what she looks like, and it's not about what Archie looks like. It's about how people are allowed to treat him differently. And they said this, that the palace or the institution, whatever, pulled away Archie's titles that were his birthright to receive.
He wasn't going to receive security.
That was bombshell.
They basically said, we're not going to protect this individual in royal lineage, even though we've done it with other people that are less close to the crown lineage than Archie would be. Yeah. But because he's Meghan's son, I don't want to give Meghan any security. I don't want to give Archie any security. Right? She mentioned a particular convention under one of the Henrys, and forgive me. And the convention basically said that this title is bestowed at birth. It's automatic.
Yeah.
And they were like, all right, how do we figure out how to not abide by that convention so we can take this title away from Archie? So they were like, let's have these discussions about changing the results of this convention. So they were very conscious about not wanting to give him the value that he's owed. Everything that she touches and or it interacts with or is related to is devalued because of who she is.
Because
in the eyes of the crown.
Yeah.
Right? Harry's now devalued. Right? Manipulative in a manipulative way, right? She's taken him and brainwashed him and made him devalued. Her son is devalued. The position is devalued. The work that she does is devalued. You know, all the history she's had as a feminist before she even entered the royal sphere.
I mean, they use that against her.
You know,
they absolutely. The thing that Oprah asked Meghan if she had any regrets, and this is at the end of the interview, and she says, you know, I do have one, and it's that when they said they would protect me,
believing them,
that I believed them, and I let it go on for so long.
Mm-hmm.
And it got so bad because I believed that I
Mm-hmm.
would be protected. And she kind of started something, which is why I thought we need more time, because I felt like she had more to say.
Yeah, there was
But
a lot to say. In fact, we should probably just roll into.
Well, let me finish. So she said, so what she was trying to, or what she started to say was that I lost it. Hold on. Okay. She said that I believe that they would protect me. Okay. This is what she said. She was saying that I might have been able to do it for longer had I not believed what they told me initially. And that sat with me, because it's like, if I had said, okay, everybody's lying.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, they're not going to protect me. Then I can formulate a plan
Mm-hmm.
from then. And I can say to my friends, you're right. We'll have to figure this out. But when I'm told over and over again, we will protect you, and I believe the lie.
Right.
Then I'm blindsided when I'm hit again and again and again and again, because I can't understand why this is happening when I believed what you told me to be true. And this happens in any kind of relationship, right? That like people that's part of what kind of throws people off, when things go wrong, is that you're led to believe this is who I am. Yeah. This is who we are. I will
Perception
do this
doesn't
for
match
you.
Up with reality.
And it doesn't match up with reality, And so how can you deny a woman who said out loud, I don't want to be here anymore. This is too hard. My friends and my mom and everyone is telling me, like, are you okay? This is crazy. Like, they are running your name through the coals, like, for sport.
Right. Just to touch on that and clarify, for those of you guys who haven't seen the actual interview, Meghan admits that she had suicidal ideation, that she was in such a deep and dark hole that she was scared to be left alone
while she was pregnant.
And so
we'll see them spin that, I'm sure.
What basically for me, what it says is that, because today I watched the Martin Bashir Princess Diana interview, or at least most of it. I think like 2/3 of it or something like that. And then I read the rest from a transcript perspective. And one of the things that just like match up almost exactly for me is that they both had mental health issues that were ignored, diminished, and hidden away. Yeah. You weren't allowed to reach out to anybody. You weren't allowed to talk about it. You weren't even allowed to address it. Yeah. When Meghan asked, can I be hospitalized? Yeah. I think I need I think they call it a 50-51 in America, where they put you away for 72 hours. 5150. Thank you. Where they put you away for like 72 hours to make sure you're no longer a harm to yourself. Yeah. And she asked for that. She came up and they were like, nope, it's not going to look good in the press. They were so worried about what the world thought of someone getting help and how that sullied the crown, as opposed to addressing this woman's real dangerous life.
I think they just didn't want to help her. They just felt like this is all I
think it's a pattern of it entirely. I think mental health as anything, because even Harry said, I had a hard time asking for help on her behalf because I was stuck in the bubble. I had shame. I was worried about what people would think about her and me together dealing with this issue. Right. So it true. Is definitely
and I understand that
institutional fight.
Whenever I think this is how like other people can. Oh, we just spiked up. Hi guys.
How you guys
This is
doing?
how other people can relate. Right? Is that mental health, like in our own families, in our own worlds, like we are so often told like, nope, it's not that big of a deal. Oh, you just need to go to church, or you need to just lay down, or you need to suck it up, or it's not that bad. And like when she spoke, this was the most humanizing part of the interview. When Meghan spoke about not wanting Harry to leave her alone because she couldn't trust herself, and that the palace still wouldn't help. She said she went to HR. How bizarre is that? That you I am a princess of the United Kingdom, and
I can't even get proper
the
mental health.
institution won't say, okay, we'll send you somewhere.
Right.
To the point where she's like, I need to ask like a staff member for help.
Right.
And even the HR department saying, well, you're not a paid royal member, so sorry, we can't help you. There is nothing. They couldn't send somebody to her house. Like
order a
it
psychiatrist
just
or something to
didn't
come
make
up here.
sense. They could have spun this story anyway. They could have said, you know, she's on a retreat or whatever. Just like they could have, like Kate, how they said, oh, Kate, what they used to say was Kate has this really bad medical issue where she throws up all the time. So you're not going to see her at events. We don't know. Maybe she really has it. Maybe she doesn't.
Maybe Kate
right?
has bulimia like Diana.
Or I mean, Kate is very small. So it's just kind of like, why couldn't they come up with a creative solution for Meghan's disappearance for the rest of her pregnancy?
Because they didn't have any concern for her. That's the end all be all.
They fed her to the sharks on purpose.
Right. To make it like
did that.
real. There was a moment where Harry and Meghan had a conversation where she told him, and then she talked about like the courage it takes for someone who's like deep inside of depression to talk about their depression and how bad it is. And she told him one morning, they sat with it all through the morning, and then they had an event to go through later that night.
Yeah.
And she's like, people are calling me about this picture that we had taken at this event and talking about how beautiful we looked.
Mm-hmm.
And all I can remember about that photo is how when me and Harry are holding hands, how his knuckles are so white.
Yeah.
Because he's literally holding on to me for dear life. Because he had mentioned, he had asked.
Know how bad it was in that moment.
He had said, why don't you stay home in order to rest and feel better? And she was like, I don't think that's a good idea because I don't know what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
And like, that's the severity of that, the realness of that, like really sitting in the idea that it's not only just, it's all fancy and fun and you're a princess, but like honestly remembering that there are human beings that are being isolated and put into these boxes and not dealt with empathy and compassion and what that does to the human
And it wasn't the first time in Harry's family. It is well documented that his mother Diana had pushed herself down the steps, that she struggled in her pregnancy, in her marriage, and the fact that nobody did nobody did anything about it. And this goes back to like all kinds of families, that there are generational things that happen over and over again, and yet we don't step in to do anything to change the system. We just accept it as what it is. Oh yeah, that happened to so and so, but you just need to deal with it. When you ask for help and people tell you it's not that bad, or you need to say, I need medication, I'm not feeling good, I can't trust myself to be here alone. That is a real thing. And the fact that story after story after story, I think one time somebody said there were 50 articles published in like one day trashing Meghan while she was pregnant. Right. And it's just like, how can you do that? I get it. Money is money. Money is to be made. The press is press.
Well, so I think that in and of itself was a symptom of, that's a monster the institution has created.
And has some control over it. And Harry and Meghan
talked about it. They called it a symbiotic relationship where one doesn't exist without the other.
Yeah.
And basically, they talked about how there are holiday parties that are thrown by the tabloids at the palace, put on by the palace. And so there's this relationship, like as long as we continue to give you access, you'll continue to write good stories about us. And Harry mentioned it specifically. He said, my family's afraid of the press, afraid of bad press, afraid of getting dragged through the mud. Mm-hmm. And I think it almost like when you're like in a bad place, in a bad situation, and you see someone else stand up for themselves, and you're mad at that person standing up for themselves instead of mad at the abuser who's treating you both bad. Right. That's what it is. It's like they're mad at Meghan for doing what they wish they could do, which is the craziest thing, you know? So I think it's really unfortunate.
Because a lot of us like go through that. Like there's so much pressure when new families come together. There's a marriage or what have you. And there's all this pressure to live up to some standard. Like if you have generationally like lots of divorces, right? Then there's so much pressure on the new blood to then all of a sudden have like this perfect union, and they may not know how to do that. If all I know is dysfunction, how do I know how to function?
Which is true.
Healthily?
And in the same way, then you have to be like, oh, I get it. They couldn't have helped her because they don't have any of the tools or skills to pass on to her. They're in a learned system too.
Was compassion. And she said they failed at that too.
I don't think that they know how to give compassion even to their own family members.
It was sad to me that Harry basically said his father didn't answer his phone calls.
That was another.
That's some bull.
That was crazy. So Harry says that at a certain point, Charles stopped answering his phone, and it just made me think like basically when Diana was going through so much of this mess, Charles abandoned her too.
Hell yeah, he did.
So Charles is sort of used to abandoning people, especially in their times of need. And I can only imagine what Diana was going through. At least Meghan had Harry to lean on.
Well, Sunshine Brown says hurt people hurt people.
It's a good book, Sunshine.
I think that's but I think that's true, right? Like at the end of the day, like if you watch The Crown, I do watch The Crown religiously. If you watch Charles's like sort of when they show like he's a boy and just how much pressure was put on him as a young boy and how his dad tried to toughen him up and all of this and sent him away where he got bullied and this and that. And so when he saw his wife being destroyed, it's like all he could see was that she had so much more press than him, or that the people were like, Diana, 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 like pulling at her, loving her. And he was enamored with the idea by that, exactly. by the people's love of her, that he couldn't see that the negative press and all the negative pressures and the lack of support that she received from the institution meant that she wanted from him that support. And he couldn't give it because he was so jealous. The jealousy, he went into the marriage
self-centered and selfish. So
because he knew this is what he had to do.
Exactly. He knew what he had to do. It was a duty. He wanted to marry Camilla, even at that point. And she said in her interview with Martin Bashir, Diana, he always looked at me like this 19-year-old girl who just didn't have anything of her own, didn't know anything. Which
is crazy because she was literally like from a super prominent family. Like she was she wasn't I hate to be like nobody, right? Because that's like, I don't value people like that. But, in the scope of British titles and things like that, she was definitely in the sphere. Winston Churchill was a direct ancestor of her. Like her family was like was as close to royal as you could get in terms of a very long running family. So that's the word I was looking for. What? How you say that?
Aristocracy or
aristocratic. It's a fun. They're probably like us. You Americans don't know how to use these words. Whatever.
So yeah, I just the trappings of royalty, Charles abandoning, and then the isolation tactics that were used on both of Diana and Meghan. Just the idea of go sit alone, go be quiet, don't do anything, and you're not allowed to talk to anybody. She mentioned how many times where consciously and just because of the bubble she was in, she didn't know what was going on in the news or what was being talked about her. And then her friends would call hysterically or otherwise just basically downloading and saying this is what's happening. And then she would react to that, go to the Crown or the institution or the firm or whatever you want to call it and say, can you help with this?
Yeah.
And they'd be like, meh. You just got to suck it up. It's the way it is.
Or she asked, I didn't realize that she had to ask to have lunch with her friends, and how the palace said, not just the palace, but she said family members, the royal family would say, oh, girl, you're everywhere.
Right. You need to calm down.
You are all over the papers. You need to just sit down.
Mind you, she mentioned that she
hadn't gone anywhere in like,
twice
what was it?
In
4 months?
4 months or something like that.
Like,
I haven't been anywhere. How much more chill should I get?
Right. I have no control over this. How about you tell your pansies that are on your payroll to stop giving information to prop you up?
Right.
And then I wouldn't be in the papers. And then I could go live my life. It was like no one had any, like they just put it all on her that she was in the papers. And it's like,
If you just do what we tell you to do, you'll stop being in the papers.
I'm not running to the press selling negative stories on myself here, and it's just that they're all so willing to accept what they're told,
right?
Because they are all trapped in the system, as Harry said.
Right.
So
some people benefit more than others. Some people are like
little bit of compassion,
indoctrinated, just like I can't see how else it's supposed to work, and no one, it's like that. What's her name mentioned it? Meghan mentioned it about Archie. She said, "We're reading a book, and in the book it says, if you see it, you can be it." And I know I'm connecting wild dots here, but basically not many people in the institution have seen anybody do it differently.
Right.
And so they're just it's unwilling. Antithetical to their being. Now, so when you see how bad it hurts
as a woman of color
exactly
is threatening.
A powerful woman of color who has their own celebrity, their own agency, their own power, their own independence, spirit, all of that. No, goals. you need to be Kate. You need to be subservient. You need to be quiet. You need to be seen and not heard, basically.
And I just wonder, here's the thing. Like, I don't think of this like many people will accuse Americans of like, we don't understand,
I don't.
Because it's not our thing. And so, partially, we don't live in a monarchy.
But I can understand humans.
What I can understand about the royal family, not necessarily like the institution of monarchy, but that none of them wants to be the one responsible for like the end of the monarchy, right? Is that even if they hate it, right, the system that they exist in, that none of them wants to be responsible for the end of it, or for horribly bad press about a particular era, or what have you. And so that's why they allow these courtiers or what have you to essentially run their lives. And we understand, even though these courtiers are like essentially office people, right? Like they're like office workers. But I think that because the aristocracy is so caught up in this, that it's like this payola machine. I think Americans understand like the payola aspect of it.
I would agree that Kate is not
you can't
necessarily
say class, because class in a like.
No, I'm not worried about the class part. I'm just saying in terms of like, but you got who is the person that well, at the end of the day,
I wouldn't pay too much attention.
At the end of the day,
I was saying something.
Yeah, go
but
ahead.
I forgot. I just think that my point was that nobody wants to be responsible for none of the members of the royal family wants to be responsible for the end of something or a bad era, and there's talk about I don't remember what his name was, the Duke of Windsor or what have you, who was supposed to be king and then left for an American. But I don't think that when you look at historical biographies or whatever, it seemed like he didn't want the role anyway, right? And that I think a lot of trapped people, Harry included, is that when you're unhappy with how the system works, and you realize that you as one person can't be the one to change it, you will find someone to help you get free, whether consciously or unconsciously. You will find somebody. And I do believe on some level, when Harry met Meghan, he saw something different than he saw in any other woman. And I think it mirrored something inside of him, this desire to really not be a part of this institution. Obviously, he's born into it and he loves his family. But at the end of the day, at the end of the day, like, he grew up there. This is his actual family. It's not just the job for him. But ultimately, he had a choice to make for his new union. And you cannot separate Harry from Meghan, which so many people want to do. They want to see Harry come back to the UK and leave Meghan. And they want to treat them as if, by taking and removing all of these titles and roles and responsibility, they're treating them as if how they treat people who divorce the family, right? So in the era of Diana and Fergie, like, this is what happened to them, but they also divorced the family, right? Like like Meghan did not divorce Harry, right? Harry cannot divorce his family, as much as you want to, put this spin on you know, put this spin on, her independence. But at the end of the day, like, they're two grown people who made the best choice for themselves.
Right. And I think that comes down to, sort of one like final, not one final, but just like one idea that I wrote down towards the end of the interview was that they're both making conscious decisions to fight for each other. And that's different depending on who you look at it. For Harry, I can connect with him wanting to protect his family, protect his wife, protect his children, and do what's necessary to get them out of danger. I think what came out of this interview was how the narrative says they're so conniving, they're making all these decisions, they're money hungry, but so many of the decisions they made were reactions to basically danger, to basically their lives being in danger. So when they took, first they're saying they're not going to give Archie any security at all.
Yeah.
Right? Not even off the bat. Then they say we're going to take Harry's security away. Right? And he mentions how not only has the press found out where we are, we're about to go into lockdown
there. Yeah.
Right? We're not going to be protected. Like, so we have to make these decisions of what we're going to do in order to make sure that we're protected as a family, just a physical danger perspective. Because mind you, they're getting the death threats, the things we don't hear about. There's things being sent to them. And then you talk about the idea of the mental health aspect. Like, we have to make a decision on how we're going to approach this entire aspect because it's literally killing us from the inside out. And so just the idea that all of this has been a reaction to maintaining their own safety and just understanding
as public people, right? And that's not about self-importance. That's about the reality.
Self-survival.
That's about the reality of that this person is born into this family that has literally made him a public person since he was born.
Right.
And therefore to remove, like, listen, we pay for, and not even just Americans, but the UK, like, you people who live there, y'all pay for all kinds of people who you don't even know, ambassadors and things like that for their security. And because you don't like the actions of your prince, that you're just going to strip him of security. Like, it doesn't make any sense. And then you want to try to somehow in the media say that this is okay because he's a bad boy and his wife is a bad girl and they need to be punished. And it's just like, first of all, sending that narrative when they're already polarizing because of who the media set them up to be, right, is actually quite literally putting them in harm's way, especially when you then give out their location.
Right.
It's scary. It's almost like, did you want these people to die? I mean, let's be honest here. And if Diana
I don't think they wanted them to die. Well, I don't think it's that. I think it's that we want to scare you enough to come back into fold. I think that's what it is. It's like, you can't survive without us. I think that was sort of the message, even if it was implicit. It was that if you're not going to be able to survive without us, you're going to have to come back home sooner or later anyway. We're going to show you why you need us.
And be locked up.
and the funny thing is that they've said, like, literally, we are happier, more comfortable, in a better space,
more
than
financially
we ever have been.
Secure.
Exactly.
And as much as, like, the media love to say that they're just out here parading themselves because they, off of the backs of the royal family, because they have the royal family titles and things like that, or positioning. And it's like, they literally took everything. They took our salary. They took our security. What were we meant to do? Like, you just want me to be poor. Oh, let me get this right. So everybody else can make money off my name, including the media that prints 50 articles a day about us. On both sides of the article, the media, the talk media, on daily morning shows who talk about it. So all these people deserve to get paid off my name. Right. But I can't pay myself and for my own security and my family. Why? Because of the optics of it? Oh, okay.
It's always optics.
And
it's
I
always
love
control.
that they're just like, we're doing what we want to do. Control. And if I want to call my grandparents-in-law to see how they're doing, I'm gonna do that.
Yeah, Meghan mentioned that she called the queen to
check on Philip.
Right, check on Philip once he was in the hospital. So
Philly boy.
At the end of the day, we're going to hear all these narratives about, they're doing all these horrible
fallout
things.
Will be
but
great.
Guess what?
But we know
behind the scenes, they're both doing their job to get back to par with their families, which is what happens, right? The new identity is forged, differences occur, and then you have to build new communication patterns. Mrs. T was just mentioning that, Meghan was what the royal family needed it to bring it into the modern sphere. And if they had taken the opportunity, that definitely would have happened. But then you have all these people who are so invested in the way things are.
Yeah,
and they're just going to fight against it, and it's a long battle to change. They refuse
to see anything different. And I mean, we know that in any group of people who have struggled, for a cause, to make something different, you are always going to
bump
be brought
it against
up
the institution.
That's just how institution works, is to like protect how things have always been done. And so, I'm not even surprised at that. But the fact that they offered to leave and to go other places and were literally turned down, it's like they really had no choice. It seems like they wanted them to go away because they thought they were too big.
Mind you, this was set up pre-everything when they were just dating. Before they had even gotten married, Harry mentioned that the firm or someone in his family, I correct me of who was saying it, but he said that they were already saying, make sure she keeps acting, make sure she keeps her day job, make sure that she doesn't make too many changes, because they were setting up the line to say that, listen, she's not going to be here that long. We don't want to have to pay for her. We're going to get rid of her at some point, somehow, anyway.
Yeah. And and you have to wonder, like, what was the reasoning for that? The fact that the institution would say that Meghan should continue acting, they knew that wouldn't play well in the press if she continued acting. So why would they even suggest that to say we don't want to pay for her? Who is we? Is that the family? That's the taxpayers?
I put the we in there, but I'm sure it's basically like, we don't want her involved in the royal business, in the royal family business.
But they've done it for other people. And this is where it doesn't make sense that, like, before Harry met Meghan, and it sounds like
before Harry met Sally.
Yeah. Before Harry met Meghan, he was a prince who worked in the army. And there was this whole push for him to leave the army and to join the fold of the royal,
true royal,
as a senior royal. Working royal. And they pulled him out of something that he loved to do in order to do this job of shaking hands, planting trees, and waving, and for what? They knew at some point he would have to get married. That we see a lot of comments of, drawings to Diana. Let me see. Conda Morgan says they took away Diana's security too. They did, but she was divorced from Charles at that point. That was something that came out of the divorce, and it's not like Meghan and Harry are divorced.
Harry's still a part of the family, right?
Taking away Harry was strategic. Make those conspiracy theories. Well, yeah, and we know that in other interviews, Harry has talked about knowing what happened to his mother, and he has alluded, to a lot of things. And I do think there's things that he has understanding of that. All we can do as the public is speculate, because there are some things, because a lot of those players are alive. Right? Those people are still alive. And so he's unwilling to throw those people under the bus. And this is why I'm excited that they got their story out. I think a lot of fans or just, people, royal watchers or what have you, were nervous. I think on both sides, people who don't like them, people who do like them, were nervous about the impact. But what I realized is that it doesn't matter if they stayed silent or not. They've been silent for 4 years.
Yes,
and it didn't stop the machine.
What really needed to happen is for them to step into who they want to be, as opposed to who everybody else wants them to be. And I think today was a big milestone in that journey, right? Setting up Archwell, moving and establishing their own presence in California. Those are all steps along the way. But now speaking your own truth, there's so much that goes into, because I've been in an abusive relationship, like in a work setting where I had a crazy boss. And one of the biggest things about it is not only that isolation where they try to keep you in a box and separate you from people who will either tell you the truth or listen to your truth, but then
Yeah.
Also, the idea that they start telling you your truth is false, so you have less ownership over it and wanting to speak about it. And one of the biggest steps you can take to breaking free from something like that is just saying it, like in the public sphere, owning it, and not feeling like I'm just going to say it. You can fight it and talk about it how you want to. You can digest it. It doesn't matter.
Try to go behind me
truth.
And back talk and, give responses and reactions and say I'm lying. But once it's out there, it's out there.
Right.
And it's up for other people. It really isn't really about how well you retell the story. But now other people have other information besides what the abuser is telling them.
The abuser will craft their own image in other people's minds and, many times make you the bad person. And it's all about you deciding that I don't have to play this war with you. I don't have to play a game. I'm just going to stand on my truth and let the chips fall where they may. And so
do you think that at the end of it, that this interview that, or just Harry and Meghan speaking their truth, was it a good idea or?
I think it was the best idea because it sets them up to now.
To put it behind them and just move forward?
I don't know if it's a put it behind them. I think it's meant to move on to the next era. So it is it's a bit of putting it behind me, but I'm assimilating it into my being. It's not just something I'm ignore. It's not the secret. It's not a box. It is just part of history.
Right.
It is now part of who I am, and I'm a step forward.
It's a matter of public record that we have denied what we couldn't deny for so long, that we have set straight what hasn't been set straight, and that at least you can't tell these stories that you've been rewriting the same way, because now you can't ignore what we've said now because it's a matter of public record, and
now
you would
I can
look like a
focus
bad
on something else.
And now I can focus, yes.
Right?
And so
now I move on.
Yeah. And so, I mean, yes, will the negative articles stop? No, absolutely not. They just won't. People will continue to, do this or what have you. But they did the same thing with Diana. Is she the end? Is this the royal, the war of the, what were their names? The Cambridge? No, that's not right.
The Sussexes and the.
Wait, what's Charles's? I don't know what his
Winchester.
I don't know, whatever. The royal, the war between them. Between Charles and Diana, is this the end of the monarchy? They will always find somebody to blame the end of the monarchy on, and maybe it's because it does need to end, but I don't think it will. And honestly, as an American, as a woman, I don't want it to go down not on her. If it goes down, it needs to go down on all these other, fogidy dogities.
Thank you.
That are boring as hell.
House of Wales.
Thank you, Conda. Sorry, we could not get it together. I was like, I couldn't remember their name.
Kensington. That was a longer word than Wales, but it is Wales. You're right.
Yeah, the House of Wales. And here's the thing. I want to see Prince Charles. I mean, do I want to? I don't care, but I want to see Prince Charles. He's been waiting for so long, and I wonder if him finally being king, will that soften him somehow to Archie and the other baby, the new baby that's coming to his son Harry? I don't know. I can never pretend to understand the pressures that come with being king, and it's like, to Americans, right? It's such like a weird concept.
I would assume it's the same pressures that come from being president or like the first lady,
but people don't really, we don't tell those stories like how they tell royal stories, right? Like royal stories become a part of childhood for people who are so far removed from royalty, right? Like that it becomes fairy tale and fodder. So there's something that they do that you believe in that, versus like presidents of whatever, like we don't, it's just different. It's something about sort of a family business that is 1,200 years old versus a presidency that can't last more than 8 years, and there's a reason for that. That's why we're a republic, but what I do think could come out of it, this interview, is more conversations, which has already come out of it, but is more conversation about the Commonwealth, and those countries of, they're not all countries of color. I mean, they are, because people of color are everywhere and have always been everywhere, right? Like globalization is not new. People have always been traveling around to different countries or what have you forever. But places like Canada and Jamaica, we've seen a lot of the West Indies in the last few months kind of say like, we're going to take the queen off our money, or we're going to remove her as head of state. India notoriously doesn't like to attend Commonwealth functions. The queen basically has to beg them personally to attend, because they're like, F you took our jewels, our money, our, whatever. Like, no, we had our own royal people and y'all came over, 200 something years ago and, enslaved our people. Like, I kind of love India for that. I wish the continent of Africa, all of those countries kind of came together more, but I understand, there's just differences. But it'll be interesting to see, like Australia, like many of these countries who are in the Commonwealth have for a long time been like, we don't really care about the monarchy. Because why would you? It's a country way over here, and they technically are your head of state. They technically rule you. They probably get money from you from time to time. Like, that's weird. And so it'll be interesting to see like how many people are just willing to move on from that chapter of their life. And I think less that it's going to happen after the interview. I did say that I think that's what's going to come out of it. But I actually think that will more likely happen when the queen dies. Because, she's been around so long.
Have some level of connection to her, and we'll just give her that level of respect and whatnot. I was just thinking about, what should come out of what's next, basically. I was thinking about what's next. And
they're going to have a little girl.
But even beyond that, I think that we have forgotten as an image what Harry and Meghan can do for pushing human rights forward, pushing a cause. And the world has missed out on Harry and Meghan's impact for 4 years. And so now that they've gotten everything out the way, the world is going to open back up. We will see them doing things
that actually will affect all of us.
Exactly. We won't necessarily understand until it's happened how impactful and monumental it'll be. And again, the idea of...
Because the media can destroy regular people just in terms of like women and people of color. And, they can just say like this, don't listen to this people, these types of people, only this for poor people. There's all of these things that are set up against us, because there's this machine that's always operating and influencing how we think, and a lot of times we always think we're so independent of media, social media, but it's not true. It's never been true.
Yeah.
Right. Like Eric is a great historian, and he loves like researching presidents, and he's more about American history, but he's talked with me about like the papers of the day and how people how it swayed public opinion.
Used by people with money, right? Like Thomas Jefferson owned his own newspapers in order to create propaganda. Like,
and you think about how Thomas Jefferson
that's
is
the Fox News of the day.
He's so revered for sort of all Americans, right? And it's
he was heated with the pen. He would pay people, he would ghostwrite all the whole nine. So he had his own little, Daily Mail blog or whatever it is that's going on.
Don't shout them out
in that day. But just going back to my point, just in terms of like, I'm excited to see Harry and Meghan as an iconic, powerful couple, bringing back to fruition the idea of a feminist couple. I think that's really important, especially nowadays, and seeing not only a woman doing well and being powerful, but seeing a man who is also powerful supporting that and then pushing his own agenda that's tied directly to it. And what we don't know what Archwell will become, but
I'm
it's set up
excited,
to be very, very impactful.
Yeah, and I think in a real way, because I think a lot of people talk about how the royal family likes to do causes and things that are like lightweight causes that look pretty in pictures, but they're not getting too deep. They're not really bringing attention and money into the cause and trying to enact some sort of change. They're really just trying to keep positive public opinion. And I am excited and delighted to see Harry and Meghan actually use the interest in them to shed light on causes that deserve some attention. So especially since they're here in America, like I feel like
they're
we're
gonna
close.
Get back to
like
what they do best
I'm
anyway.
Like, I need to start a nonprofit. Like, what causes am I excited that I can get them involved with? Like, I know that's like kind of whatever, but they feel touchable.
2025, 2030 goal, be in the same rooms as Harry and Meghan.
Yeah.
That's the glow up.
That's maybe they'll like maybe they'll see our podcast and then I don't know. All right, now we're reaching. But anyway, guys, we're coming up on an hour.
Yeah, let us know what you guys think. Make sure to subscribe, like this video if you haven't. Give us some comments later on, even when the live is done. Let us know what you think about the interview. We try to respond to everything. And let us know if there's anything you guys want us to talk about. Again,
how did you feel about the interview? Yeah.
How you felt about it, and
we'll see you next time. I'm Danny.
And I'm Eric. And this is the Glowing Up Black Podcast. You can find us on Instagram at Glowing Up Black Podcast. And you can find us on the web.
Everywhere.
glowingupblack.com.
Yep. All right. We'll see you guys later. Bye.
See ya.